Remember, this means this. I'm sorry, what? Just checking to see if you're awake. I had 25 written here. How you feeling about it so far? This is really just stick the numbers in and do the math. Instead of using the fraction, I set it up as divided by 3. It's the same thing. Take in 1/3 of it. Divide by 3. It's a little easier that way. All right. Let's move on, just for the sake of time, because I know this is kind of a long one. This is really all about just solving radical equations, solving them. Why is it necessary to check every apparent solution of a radical equation in the original equation? Sometimes you'll have numbers when you plug them in that don't work. They don't work. So they're called an extraneous solution, and we'll look at that. Radical equation is an equation with one or more radicals that have variables in their radicands. That's underneath, okay? The radicand is the stuff that's underneath the square root sign, or the root sign. All right, so solving. So part of solving is your goal is to get this by itself first. That helps if you think of it that way, okay? Here, there's nothing I can do. It's already by itself. So I'm not going to divide by 3 or add 6 or anything like that. This is already by itself over here, and it's equal to 11. So I need to get rid of that root. It's the square root. So what do I do to undo square root? Square. Square both sides. So I have 5x minus 9, because those cancel out, equals 121. Oh, look how easy that is. It's an algebra equation that you just solve. Plus 9, 5x equals 130, x equals 26. It's easy, isn't it? All right, so let's look at this one. All right, now this is not by itself. It's being multiplied by 2, so what should I do to get rid of that 2? Divide everything by 2 first. Cube root of x minus 3 equals 4. How do I undo cube root? Ah! See, it's been too long for me too. Equals 2. I have it written here. So cube root, how do I undo that? Cube it. Cube it. Both sides. Then I have x minus 3 equals 8. And x equals 11. That's okay, huh? It might get a little better than that.
Define better.
Just saying. All right. In an 8-foot ladder, an 8-foot ladder is leaned against a wall. The height of the ladder along the wall is given by this function right here. Okay? Where x is the distance along the floor from the base of the ladder to the wall. That's what x represents. Estimate the distance that the ladder should be placed from the wall in order for the ladder to reach 7 feet from the floor. So if I just think about, here's a ladder. You may not need to draw a picture. Here's a wall. The distance here is x. Yes? This distance here is represented by h of x. Okay? So what is this? Is this h of x or is this x? This is h of x, isn't it? So I'm going to plug in where h of s is in the equation and solve for x. So I'm going to plug in 7 for h of x equals 64 minus x squared. This is a minus. Okay. Is this by itself? Yes. So how do I undo the square root? Square both sides. And I get 49 equals 64 minus x squared. Oh, look, we're going to have a quadratic equation. Yay, we have to factor. Yeah. Okay. Oh, we don't have to factor this one. We don't. We can subtract 64 from this one. Watch where it's going.
No.
Negative 15 equals negative x squared. I don't like that. It's all squinched, so I'm going to come up here. Negative 15 equals negative x squared. Yeah, those negatives are yucky. How can I get rid of it? Divide by negative 1 on both sides. X squared equals 15. Let's take the square root of 15. I'm going to get a positive and a negative version, right? Yes, Mrs. Burgess, you are. Equals plus or minus 3.9. Well, does the negative make sense to this problem?
No.
No, because we're talking about how far from the wall the ladder has to be placed. So I am just going to say it's only the positive. So it's 3.9 feet is my answer. Negative 3.9 is called an extraneous solution. It does no good to my problem. Okay? All right. The back is a lot of examples. I may not do them all because they're very similar, but we'll see. All right, so here's where it gets kind of fun. Ready? So here we have to solve. Now, you got to remember, and maybe it doesn't make a difference to you. What if I have this? What can I multiply this by to make 1? Just this. What can I multiply this by to have it equal 1? Oh, somebody's, yeah, by its reciprocal, right? If I multiply 2/3 by its reciprocal, it's going to equal 1, correct? Which will help us solve these problems. So this is 7 times x to the 3/5. If I divide both sides by 7 first and get that variable by itself, x to the 3/5 equals 8. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to work with this. This is a pain. Yeah? But I can multiply this whole thing by 5/3 and this whole thing by 5/3 to help me get rid of that exponent. So now I have this. X equals. Ready? Watch this. How can I rewrite this as a root? Yes. Thank you. The cube root of 8 to the 5th. I rewrote this as a root. You got to get real comfortable with doing that. This is back from...
Oh, that's legal?
Yes, before. What's the cube root of 8? Shh. 2. What's 2 to the 5th? Does anybody know?
32.
Cube root of 8 is 2. To the 5th is 32. X is 32. Not too bad, huh? I could do this, but I don't really have time to do it. It's the same as this, exactly the same, okay? All right. So this one here, let's divide by -2. Divide by -2. So this talking is so distracting to me, I can't even tell you. It's really hard to teach. Divide by -2, and I have x to the 3/4 equals 8. How do I get rid of that 3/4? Multiply both sides by 4/3. Okay, this times this becomes 1. 3/4 times 4/3 is 1, so I just have x equals the cube root of 8 to the 4th power. What's the cube root of 8?
2.
To the 4th? 16. Okie-dokie? All right. Let's add a little more now. So here, what do you think I have to do first to start this? Add 9. X minus 4 to the 2/3 equals 25. How do I get rid of that 2/3?
3 seconds.
Multiply both sides by 3/2. I'm just going to write 3/2 here, just for the sake of simplifying things. If I do this side, this goes away as well, right? So I'm just going to write x minus 4 equals, I can rewrite this as the square root of 25 cubed. I'm going to keep this like this until I figure out what this is. What's the square root of 25? 5 cubed. Be careful though. When I have the square root of 25, I have a plus or a minus, don't I? So I have plus or minus 5. Both of those are cubed, would be plus or minus 125. So x minus 4 equals plus or minus 125. Because the square root of 25 is a positive or a negative. Now I add 4 to both positive 125 and negative 125. So add 4, so x is going to be 129, and add 4 to negative 125, which would be negative 121. Voila. Okay? This is really the same way as this. You multiply both sides by 2/5. I'm just going to write it out real quick. Y'all see how I got there?
Yeah.
Okay? X plus 3 equals the 5th root of 32 squared. Now, does an odd root have a positive and a negative?
No.
It doesn't. It only has the positive here. So we got x, so the 5th root of 32 is 2.
So 4.
Okay, so x plus 3 equals 2 squared, 4. You subtract 3, you get x equals 1. Okie dokie?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if this one's really any different. It's really the same, except, let's just go this one step. I'm going to do it kind of quickly. Equals 4. Wait a minute. I want to get rid of the 1/3. So what would you multiply both sides by exponent? 3. So multiply both sides by 3. Or raise both sides to a 3. However you want to say it. It's not multiply. And then you would finish this and you would get x equals 62.
What was different about that?
Because you had a fraction exponent, and instead of multiplying by a reciprocal, well, it is a reciprocal, but it's just multiplying by a whole number. It's the only thing that's different. It's not really any different. All right, let's look at these. 62. I didn't finish it. I just kind of wanted to show you that you multiply by 3 there. Okay. So you're going to get these types of problems, some that you're going to have to practice. These are a little bit different. Let's look at this. What do you think you might do to start solving this? Maybe get rid of that root. How would I get rid of that root? Square both sides. Okay? So now I have x minus 6 equals, ready? X minus 8 squared. This is where you got to get kind of good at those nice little patterns that we saw earlier. Equals x squared minus 16x plus 64. If you can't do it that fast, write it out in FOIL. It's x minus 8 times x minus 8 and you FOIL. Yeah? Okay, now I need to solve for x. It's a quadratic equation. I have to set it equal to what? 0. In order to factor it and solve for x, okay? So I'm going to add 6 to both sides and subtract x. So this becomes 0. Add 6, subtract x. So I get this, x squared minus 17x plus 70. I added 6 and subtracted x. Yeah? Oh, look, you get to factor. This one's an easy one to factor. Factors of 70 that add to negative 17. Negative 10 and negative 7. Yeah? Okay. Now, that tells me that x is equal to 10 and 7, but we're not done because with these, you have to make sure that both of these will work in your original equation. Let me show you what happens. When we plug in 10, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to have this cube, or the square root of 10 minus 6 equals 10 minus 8. Let's check and see if that's true. I plugged in 10 for x. This is 4, and the square root is 2 and 2. 10 works. 10 is good. Let's try 7. Does 7 minus 6 equal 7 minus 8? This is 1. The square root of 1 is 1. Negative 1. But see, you have to remember that you have plus and minus 1, and it doesn't equal the positive 1. Okay? So no, it's extraneous. 7 does not work. Always have to check that with these types of problems. All right, this one's a little quicker. Let's work through it real quick. What do you think you might do to first start solving this? Square both sides. Square both sides. And you get 2x plus 5 equals x plus 7. Aw, look how pretty that is. That's pretty. Doesn't matter what you do first. I subtracted x from both sides. It doesn't really matter what you do first. Subtract 5, x equals 2. Oh, look at that. Let's just double check that it makes the equation true. This is beautiful. Square root of 2 times 2 plus 5, does that equal the square root of 2 plus 7? 3 equals 3. So it's all good. Okay. These two are very similar, so I'm just going to do one of them.
That's not what it is.
These are doozies. I like to call them doozies.
It's not what.
All right, let's look at this. Is there anything that I can do here? If I add 2, it's not going to help me, is it? So I got to think about getting rid of these. So I'm going to square both sides. Oh, boy. Ready? First, I'm going to simplify that side. That just equals x minus 2. Easy enough. What this becomes, are you ready? This is just a binomial squared. It's a binomial squared. That's all you do. So I'm going to, if I lay it out like this, let me show you what it looks like. Minus 2 times the root x plus 6 minus 2. You just look at this as the first term. Look at that as the first term. So if I multiply my first terms together, what do I get? What's the square root of x plus 6 times the square root of x plus 6? X plus 6. I'm foiling, see? I'm squaring this whole thing. I had to do that. So my first term, I'm going to move this down a little bit. My first term is x plus 6. FOIL. F-O-I-L. First term times first term. Outer two terms would be this times this. This times this is negative 2. Let me just simplify this. Negative 2 times the square root of x plus negative 2 times the square root of x is going to give me negative 4 times the square root of x as my middle term. That's my first term. There's my middle term. And then the last is negative 2 times negative 2, which is plus 4. That's my last term when I FOIL that big thing. Wasn't that fun?
No.
Don't freak out too much about these problems. These are like the challenge, the mother of all the problems. Okay? Negative 2 times negative 2. The last term is plus 4. Then you combine, and you get x plus 10 minus 4 times the square root of x plus 6. And then you can bring this stuff over here. So you subtract x from both sides and subtract 10 from both sides. I combined this 6 and 4. Because you don't have to. There's no square in here. Watch how it works out. This goes away, this goes away. I still have this. Equals this goes away. Negative 12. Oh, it's becoming pretty now. Divide by negative 4. And I get the square root of x plus 6 equals 3. Square both sides. Like I said, this is the mother of all problems. I might give you one of these to try. It's good to try. Challenge yourself. X plus 6 equals 9. And x equals 3.
Wait, I thought it was a negative.